Rescuers pull a victim from the rubble after Russian shelling decimates a shopping mall in central Kyiv. The bomb claiming at least 8 lives overnight, prompting the city's mayor to introduce a 35-hour curfew.
What are they trying to achieve by mercilessly bombing shopping malls, hospitals, maternity areas, houses, civilians?
Russian forces not letting up on civilian targets, these protesters fleeing gunshots in the southern city of Kherson. Citizens desperately trying to escape the terror.
They killed all the civilians. They don't fight troops, they fight people.
I remember how the Germans attacked us. They didn't mess with us like this.
Kherson, the only city captured so far. Ukraine refusing to surrender the besieged city of Mariupol.
Russia is now committing a real act of genocide. For 3 weeks, 400,000 citizens have been surrounded without food, water, light, heat.
The Black Sea city of Odessa is next in Russia's sights, enduring its first airstrike overnight as citizens prepare for the worst.
I think what we have seen is a real increase in the intensity of the fighting. Notably, the number of airstrikes.
We certainly see clear evidence that Russian forces are committing war crimes.
They're also suggesting that Ukraine has biological and chemical weapons. That's a clear sign he's considering using both of those.
Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky calling for a meeting with Putin.
I think that without this meeting, you cannot truly understand what they are prepared to do in order to stop the war.
More than 10 million Ukrainians are now displaced by the war, but their spirit won't be broken. This little girl, who just weeks ago captured the world from a bomb shelter in Kyiv, now safe in Poland, singing for her besieged homeland once again.
The devastation that we're seeing now is just, it's mind-blowing. And I know there's a political side to this, but that humanitarian side is, I think, something that raises lots of really important questions about what happened. Like, if this war ends, when this war ends, what's left of Ukraine, Julie, and what do you do to rebuild it?
Those images are so distressing, not only from the humanitarian perspective, but the destruction of some of these beautiful cities in Ukraine. I spent a couple of weeks in Kiev for MH17 when we were working to recover the bodies from the crash site over eastern Ukraine. And Kiev is a lovely city. It was destroyed in World War II, which is obviously why they are reminiscing in a very tragic way about what happened after the Second World War. But it was rebuilt. And you have to ask, when this is over, when this conflict, when this war is over, who is going to rebuild Ukraine? Who's going to take responsibility, not only for the deaths of the citizens, but for rebuilding this country? It was already a poor country, but between NATO and the European Union and Russia, they have to take responsibility to rebuild it.
How do you see this playing out? How do you see this ending?
There has to be a negotiated peace settlement. It will mean compromise on the part of Ukraine. It is an independent sovereign nation, but President Putin has drawn a red line. He will not tolerate NATO taking in Ukraine as a member. That's just his red line. And so we can assume he will continue until Ukraine concedes that it won't join NATO. Maybe a settlement where Ukraine is neutral territory between NATO in the West and Russia. But one of these nations, whether it's Russia, whether it's the European nations, have to take responsibility for rebuilding Ukraine so people can be safe there once more.
But Zelensky's more or less accepted that the NATO thing is off the cards, and yet the bombing continues.
There's a little more than that. The negotiations are taking place, but at a low level. They're being facilitated by Turkey. It's not until you get the two leaders in the room that you'll see the negotiations at the appropriate level. That will include, I believe, some concession that Luhansk and Donetsk, those two autonomous regions, will be independent. President Putin's looking for a land bridge from Russia through to Crimea and the seas around Crimea. And those two regions will be absolutely vital for that. I don't believe it's likely that President Putin will resort to chemical weapons, conventional weapons, even though they take longer, are suiting his purposes for now. But I would be pushing from all sides, including getting China on board, to push for a negotiated settlement as soon as possible.